So a few days back, right before the Super Bowl, Jordan Love went on to Micah Parsons' podcast, I believe it's called The Edge on Bleacher Report, and they talked for about 55 minutes. It was a very interesting conversation. It felt like Jordan Love was giving a lot more depth and details into his process the past season, probably because he's talking with another NFL player who sort of, understands him and can sort of talk the same type of lingo and things like that as him. So it was very interesting. And there are a lot of different things I want to break down from this podcast. But in this first video, I want to share here about Jordan Love and sort of how he dealt with some of the critics, especially in the portion of the season near the beginning when things started to go south, things weren't going well, sort of how Jordan Love responded. So Micah Parsons said this to him. He asked him what clicked for him. He said, I remember they was like, man, we should give up on him. We should get rid of him. Then he asked him, did he see it, and was he feeding into it? And here is Jordan's response. He says this, you see everything. You don't try to see it, but you see everything. Especially after losses, I'm not about to get on no social media and try to see what people talking about because I know they talking crazy. But man, I think from the start of the year, I was locked in. And I can't imagine to be an NFL athlete, any kind of pro athlete, college athlete, when you have a bad game, we all know what social media looks like after that. People frustrated with what went down, and there definitely was a lot of that when Jordan Love was struggling. Some people saying that the Packers should get rid of him, which I think was way too early to make that kind of assessment after, 5-6 weeks into the season. I think for any young player, they deserve some time to develop and to grow, and luckily, Jordan Love was given that time, which I knew the Packers would give him, and he luckily came out on top, came out better after those struggles. And, clearly Jordan Love sort of saw some of those comments, even though after losses he wasn't trying to see them. He says, you see everything, even if you're not really trying to. If the discussion is about you probably come across it somewhere. You'd assume some of his friends or, people like that say, oh, I've been seeing this. So he knows what's being talked about, and luckily he was able to bounce back. Then he said this, Micah Parsons talked about the Packers got into a funk, and Love said this about that. After the Vegas game, I threw 3 picks that game. We lost. I threw a pick on the last play of the game. After that game, I was like, man, I felt like I was hesitating out there. I would see stuff and and I was processing. I would see it, but I'd hesitate to throw it. After the game, I was like, man, who cares? I got to trust myself. I know I'm a great player. I know I can read a defense right and put the ball where I want it. So I just got to trust myself and let it rip and be confident out there. And I feel like with quarterbacks, when they have one bad play, you either have to, you either move on from it, are able to, sort of forget about it and keep playing the same way as you have, or it's sort of in your mind, you're trying to make sure you don't make mistakes instead of just letting loose, playing free. And I think that's what we saw from Jordan in some of those games where the Packers were struggling when he had those games where he threw a ton of interceptions. He says it here that he was just thinking too much. He knew what he should do. He was hesitating. He probably wasn't fully sure of himself right at that time, sort of hesitating, not making the throws he should make. And luckily he realized that, recognized that he just has to play free. He knew who he was. He knew the kind of player he was, the level he could play at. For whatever reason, his mind was maybe getting in the way a little bit. And that also makes me wonder, how many quarterbacks out here who are young, who are having similar moments where you're going to experience some kind of difficulty. You're going to have some of these moments where in games you throw 2-3 interceptions. I think the separator of the bad players from the great players are the ones who are able to somehow mentally get over it and allow themselves to play as they have in the past, free. There are lots of players who haven't been able to get over that and are no longer starters in the league. And luckily Jordan was able to stay strong, get through it, and was better because of those different, struggles and things he went through in the earlier part of the season. So I just wanted to share that. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below. I will talk about a few other things from this podcast a little later today. But I appreciate you guys watching as always, and I'll see you guys next time.